ownership out of the reach of millions. Japan was stronger than ever, but its people did not feel richer. The basic character of the Japanese is part of the Japanese story, as they've risen to become one of the wealthiest nations in the world. And the question that's obsessed both foreigners and the Japanese people themselves is, how different are they? What is it about being Japanese, the attitudes and habits of everyday life, that helps to account for their success? $123 million now live in the crowded islands of Japan, which changed at astonishing speed from an old feudal society just over 100 years ago to a modern industrial state. These are the men Japan depends on to drive the economy forward. They're stoic, uncomplaining, and hard-working. And what helps to motivate them is a degree of loyalty and commitment to the company they work for that is seldom seen in the West. At the age of 60, Mr. Tereo Oshima has just started his retirement, but he spent all his life as a middle manager with one firm and still feels part of it.
In Japan, company employees have a strong awareness of being part of a nobility. I think you can trace it back to when we had a feudal society, the samurai society, where everyone served according to his position in the feudal hierarchy. Because Japan has been such an isolated country and had little contact with the outside world, the Japanese have evolved their own traditions and developed according to them. That's what I think.
The firm Mr. Oshima works for, close to Mount Fuji itself, is the Fuji Film Company. The people who work for it are among the 30% of the Japanese labor force who enjoy higher pay and greater security because they work for a large company. Ashigara, 60 miles west of Tokyo, is a typical Japanese town with shops, family firms, and small factories. This is a film about the people who work for a big company and about the balance they strike between their time at work and their families at home. 6:15 in the morning. Norio Kusakabe is a 49-year-old production worker. He has breakfast with his wife, mother-in-law and daughter, who all live under one roof. There's a long day ahead. They've lived in the town all their lives, and by Japanese standards, Kusakabe's lucky. His family own their own house, close to the factory. Many Fuji workers who've come from other parts of Japan live in company-owned flats, like Kozo Noguchi, a middle manager. His daily ride to work takes 15 minutes. Mr. Noguchi is 49 and head of a research section which tests cinema film. Managers at his level earn about £45,000 a year. In Japan, wages are based on age and seniority as much as on the job. Fuji employs 5,000 of Ashigara's 40,000 population. The custom is to arrive for work early, around 7:45, before the morning chimes at 8. As in most Japanese plants, company uniforms are worn by everybody. Production workers wear white. Technical and office workers wear fawn. It reflects the lack of class division in Japan. By Japanese standards, Fuji is not one of the giants. But recently it's been battling to increase exports and become an international class company. They're now number 2 in the world after Eastman Kodak. Their latest success has been a cheap throwaway camera designed to increase film sales, which it did. At the Ashigara factory, they turn out still and cinema film using a coated plastic base they make themselves. Ashigara is the main factory and research center. The administration and sales office is in Tokyo. Millions of Japanese work in open-plan offices, usually more cramped than these. There's a strict hierarchy. They must work their way up the ladder, literally desk by desk. 8 desks usually make a section, a basic working group. Nobody, not even senior managers, hides behind office doors. The bucho is the department head, and his desk is set back from the rest. Japan's white-collar workers are known as salarymen. Sometimes they're mocked by the other side of the labor force who work for themselves or in small business. But the salaryman's loyalty and commitment provides the driving force of big company Japan. He's a stereotype and a natural market for energy drinks. Every April, all over Japan, young graduates start on a journey that will transform them into the next generation of Japanese managers. For months, every major company has competed to recruit the 1.2 million who've just left university. Fuji Film has taken on 300 graduates this year, plus another 300 school leavers. Among the graduate entry is Hiroaki Shimasaka, who's just left a Tokyo University and is 23. 94% of the graduate recruits are men. The entrance ceremony is designed as a ritual to bind together the recruits and company who've chosen each other for the next 30 years. They are greeted by the president, the shacho.
Today, the 2nd of April, is literally the day when spring is in full bloom with all the cherry blossom out. And on this day, we are delighted to be welcoming 591 new recruits to the company, a very large number. Today, you have all reached the second great turning point in your lives. By seeking to be employed at Fujifilm, today all of you here are starting your adult lives as responsible members of society. As we head towards the 21st century, Fujifilm will continue to meet new challenges in the world of imaging and information. And it is you who will take up and carry forward the task of implementing this ideology.
In similar ceremonies all over Japan, the same corporate loyalties are being inculcated. Huge amounts of time have been invested in choosing the recruits. They have to get it right because no one will be sacked.
My name is Shimasaka. I'd like to talk about my aims in joining the company. When you join a company, you undertake a mission in your life. Everyone looks closely at the future. And speaking for myself, it's the painter Henry Russo who inspires me. Russo worked at his normal job as a customs official, but all the while he continued as a Sunday painter.
The management have chosen Shimasaka to make a formal response.
I hope I'll help create a dynamic surge of social change.
The level of Japanese education is very high. This is one major reason for Japan's prosperity, in my view. The second reason for our success is Confucianism, which was introduced into Japan several hundred years ago. Over these hundreds of years, the Confucian philosophy has been adapted to suit Japanese conditions. According to our Confucian culture, we should always try to elevate our position in life and ensure that tomorrow is just as important as today. We should also always be diligent and be unwaveringly disciplined and well-behaved. We haven't studied the virtues of this Japanese-style Confucianism, and it wasn't something that anyone taught us. Instead, we have soaked up this philosophy from the cultural climate around us over the centuries. I think that people all over the world are fundamentally similar. But I don't think it's true to say this means we're all the same. I think we Japanese are particularly different. After all, we have lived for hundreds, rather for over 1,000 years in this remote corner of the globe, with no cross-fertilization with people in a Western civilization. Our climate, our environment, our history and our culture have all been different in all sorts of ways for years.
It's part of the Japanese way to try to link the individual's future with the whole company. In this constant cultivation of the company family and the importance of the group, what matters most is harmony. It's seen in the way that decisions are taken at every level. Managers don't usually lead from the top. Instead, decisions are reached more laboriously.
意思決定と言いますと、まず最初に我々のグループだけで意見を
As to how we take decisions, well, what usually happens first is that our own group works out a united point of view. Then after that, we have the stage called nemawashi in Japanese, which means preparing the ground or digging round the roots.
担当者レベルというレベルで話を持っていって
In practice, we don't go straight ahead and hold formal meetings with other sections. We prefer to go along to the individuals involved and get their agreement in advance that we should move on to the next stage.
踏むことがあるわけですね。
おはようございます。連絡事項からですが、HK からですが、ホワイトボード、電子ボードにですね。
Notices matters to report. Firstly, a notice about the markers used on whiteboards and circuit boards. The notice is as follows. We had been restricting our purchases of markers used at the Yashigara factory to the supplier line. So would each department report on the characteristics of the markers they're using?
にはその遠慮するという言葉がありますね。
In Japan, we have a word enryo, which means reserve or holding back. And I think it's this enryo which makes us reluctant to impose ourselves on others in the group.
ないかなというふうに考えます。お互いの気持ちをもちろん
It's our custom to exercise this reserve, of course, to try to understand each other's feelings.
自分の意思をあまりそのグループを壊さないような
But we also try to suppress our own will so that we don't shatter the unity of the group.
あると思います。
じゃあ終わります。じゃあ安全宣言をお願いします。
Would you lead the calls, please?
それではタッチ&コールを行います。
Okay, let's do the touch and call.
A 足0歳で行こう。
Let's have no accidents.
A 足0歳で行こう。よし。
Mr. Noguchi spent 13 years working for a Fuji office in Germany and returned to a very different life 3 years ago.
仕事ですと例えば
When I worked in Germany, I had my own area of responsibility.
ところが
But when I came back to Japan, there were lots of things I could no longer do as I saw fit.
向こうでも自分だけの都合でできませんけれども
Of course, even abroad, I couldn't do everything according to my own convenience. But here, I can't do things based on my own judgment.
都合とだからみんなの
Attitudes are different in Japan, and I've got to take everyone's views into account far more.
そういうことで
So compared to working abroad, I've got a much stronger sense of working as part of a company.
Supervisors like Mr. Kusakabe are all promoted from the manual worker ranks, but almost never younger than their late 30s. Seniority counts, but so does experience.
このネジは別に交換するとかそういうことはなくて点検だけでいいですか？そうですね。ああ、そうですか。その他の故障は特にないです。特にないですね。ではあとはこれを掃除すれば。日本人はそれだけ昔からこう真面目だ。
The Japanese have always been very serious-minded, a very sincere and faithful people. It's been part of our character for so long that we tend to work hard naturally, without even thinking about it. I hear that in other countries, people are always dashing off on holiday, going on trips and so on for a week or even a month at a time. But Japanese people just wouldn't be able to do that.
As the entrance ceremony ends, Fuji's recruits gather to be photographed. The companies know that times are changing. A new generation may not be willing to make the sacrifices expected in the past.
We have to convey the point to young people that they can get a chance to do a real job even from an early stage in their careers. We have to tell them that company life can actually be enjoyable, not just the work itself, but one's life within the company. And these days we have to reassure young people joining the company that they can enjoy a satisfactory private life.
Before they start their first jobs, the graduate recruits will spend 3 weeks of intensive training in every part of the company's activities. And they'll develop close personal bonds which will remain as the class of 1990 goes up the company. Japanese companies believe in training at every level. Videos are big business.
Oh, look at that sparkle. The glitter of a diamond is wonderful, isn't it? And you too are diamonds.
This one teaches manners for women. First, how not to do it.
Uh-oh, who's that coming towards us? Could it be a superior? It looks as though she's still got that unpleasant frown. Who is it this time? That gave the client an unpleasant surprise. Very nice indeed. When greeting a visitor, stop smartly and make a polite bow.
The
older the generation, the more common the attitude that women should be obedient and meek, that at work they should only be men's assistants and helpers. There's a strong tendency, particularly among older men, to look on women not as equal partners in work, but to want to dictate how a woman should be. And at home as well, they want the woman to play a supporting role to the husband. Please excuse me.
Almost half of the employees who come in at 18 from high school are women. Their career prospects are limited.
If you serve it like this, even coarse brown tea will taste like refined green tea. Isn't it amazing?
Welcome. I'm sorry to have disturbed you.
The lifetime employment system is not for them. They'll be expected to leave when they marry. Back in their 3-bedroom flat, Mr. Noguchi's wife Masuko goes about her morning chores and airs the futon. They married 19 years ago, and she would have liked to continued working.
Some companies can be fussy about matters like this.
In
the old days, the general attitude was that once you married, you lived on your husband's salary. If a wife worked as well as the husband, they might be better off financially, but it would cause loss of face for the husband.
Living in a company flat keeps her in constant contact with other company wives.
あと公園のフェンスに穴が開いてるでしょ、あれがちょっと飛び出てる部分が危ないのよね。で見ると折ってるんですけど、やっぱ
Each block has a small maintenance committee to keep the company up to the mark in its role as landlord. Hierarchy counts here too. Mrs. Noguchi is a senior wife, so she is the group leader who keeps the records and speaks on the tenant's behalf.
バラ線が間隔がちょっと広いのよね。だからそこから子供が入りやすいので、その間隔をちょっとつぼめる程度に。じゃあこれあとは会社に今日の報告しときますので。はい。お願いします。なるべく早く即答いただけるようにね。そうですね。頑張ります。お願いします。
Japanese women can speak more freely about everyday life than their husbands because they are outside the direct control of the company. But they're still confined to the role that's expected of them, to marry and look after a husband.
お父さんいないからいらない。この小イカ煮付け用にね。
まあ主人の持ってきたサラ
A wife's job is to manage the family accounts within the limits of her husband's salary, to bring up healthy children, and to create an environment in which it's easy for a husband to get on with his work.
はいどうもありがとうございました。はいじゃあこれね。じゃあどうもありがとうございました。
The path to Mrs. Noguchi's marriage was complicated by Japanese tradition.
まあ彼が先にドイツに行く時にまだ結婚してない時ですから。
When my husband went to Germany, we weren't married. His parents told him to think of me as just one possible candidate for marriage.
候補者の一人として考えとくとご両親は言いました。
While he was away, I went to see his parents in Sapporo. When his mother was in Tokyo, we'd have a meal together.
札幌やなんかにも遊びに行ってたり、お母様が東京の方に出てらっしゃれば。
But in order to get a young woman whom his mother liked as her daughter-in-law, she actually sent one particular girl all the way to Germany for a formal meeting with a view to an arranged marriage.
ある女性をドイツの方までお見合いに行かしたということです。
やっぱりさ、高級品のね、ピックが並んでるから。経通りを歩いてるみたいで。
She still meets other wives who were posted to Germany with them and who are still friends.
どうご主人、和歌山行っちゃって。これから2年間単身。寂しい。浮気するチャンスとか。有意義よ。有意義。でもどうせね、いてもいなかったからね、毎日ね。
遅く帰ってきてるのがまあね。
もう夜帰ってこないっていうだけで。浮気の心配ない？考えたことないわ。わかんないわよ、男の人ですけどね。野口さんじゃあるまいしね。そうなんで。
In the past, Japanese companies saw it as their responsibility to help their male employees find brides. Women would write in suggesting their eligible daughters. These days, there are more office romances.
そうですね。私が会社に入社したのはもう8年も9年。
I joined the company 8 or 9 years ago, and at that time, getting a job was regarded as just a step you took before marriage. Getting a job was what we call a squatting stool in Japan, meaning something to just rest on temporarily, or a stopgap.
感じはありました。日本っていうのはしょうがないね。やっぱり結婚する。
結婚するまではまだ親が強いね。
そう。
Mrs. Ishikawa met her husband at Fujifilm on a course and married 6 months ago in a traditional wedding ceremony.
まだね、ここはね、緊張してなかったね。まだぼーっとしてる感じだったけど。
そうね。なんかここに本当に立ってるんだなっていう、立ってるのかな、それとも夢でも見てるのかなっていう、そういう感じであんまり実感もなかったし、
ここで誓いの言葉はなんとかうまくできたんだけど、この指輪が入らなかった。緊張してね。お互いに手が汗でびっしょりだったから、なかなかね、入らなかったね。
ウェディングドレスが違和感がなくてよかったわね。もうちょっと違和感があるかと思ったけど。
大体みんなね、着物着るからね、この時はね。
そうね。まあその方が日本らしいって言えば日本らしいのかもしれないけど、私は小さい時からウェディングドレスが着たかったから、まあ満足ね。それは日本人って小さい時からに私たち女の子は
Getting married is a dream every little girl has in Japan, and women think of it as a sort of landmark in their lives. We think only as far as getting a job and then getting married.
それから結婚した後にまた第二の人生を考えるってことで、
Once we've got married, we've achieved the first great objective in our lives. We tell ourselves we'll think things through again after marriage, but it seems we're unable to think about our lives as a continuous whole.
When the Oshimas married 35 years ago, over 70% of the marriages were arranged in the traditional way by a go-between.
From the old days, Japanese men have tended to lord it over their wives. We thought that they should just follow us faithfully. We dragged them along after us without even giving them a chance to agree, let alone consider whether or not they didn't want to. I don't know how Japan may change hereafter, but I think this traditional element will probably remain well-rooted.
Men can plough all their energies into their jobs because they have no worries at home. I hope my husband appreciated my strength, and because everything was peaceful at home, he could give everything he'd got to the company.
Fuji makes film for the motion picture industry. Mr. Noguchi's job is to look after product development and quality. On the roof of the plant, he runs a company test to see if a batch of film is up to standard.
One area where we differ from Europe is that here in Japan it's the company that instills values in people. For example, right at the beginning with the new recruits induction course, the company makes you get used to life as a salaryman. Indeed, the company creates that lifestyle, and it's then up to the individual to fit in.
The class of 1990 get another pep talk on a familiar theme.
What is your job? What is it to work? I think each of you should consider this freely for yourselves. If your answers differ, well, that's nothing to be surprised about. Each person's answer is very closely tied in with the ways you live your life. Let's think about it together for a moment.
Mr. Suzuki is one of the top 6 directors in the company.
The thought is that to toil, to labor, to raise sweat on your brow, in short, to work, this is not a means to an end in human life. It is the very aim of life itself.
This sort of rhetoric is a normal part of Japanese corporate life, and workers like Mr. Kusakabe have grown up with it.
I think foreigners make a sharp distinction, where work is work and leisure is leisure. But with us, almost everybody gives top priority to their work. So I think there's a big gap here between us.
The unions meet departmental management at twice-yearly liaison meetings. At today's meeting, management opened their innings with proposals for a new product, which means more work.
We've had to work a lot of overtime. A lot of people have had to come in to lend us a hand. We've had a great number of advice sessions, discussions in the workplace. And I understand that some sections have had as many as 18 meetings. We're very grateful to everyone for that. Thanks for your cooperation. And as a result, we've been able to go ahead with production without any hitches. Now, it's as plain to see as the sun in the sky that in the second half of the year, fluctuations in production are to be severe. So I'm afraid we're going to have to make unreasonable demands on you again. Could we have the union side next, please?
The union's priority is different from management's. Today, they're asking for more time off.
The report into working hours is out, and one of the things people are talking about is getting time off. Wouldn't it be possible for us to have a bit more time off around the public holidays? Of course, there'd be certain guarantees. First, working hours wouldn't be cut below the minimum. Second, machinery would be kept operating. And third, no extra people would be taken on. Given these undertakings, couldn't you increase time off?
Oh, that's pretty difficult. That would be hard.
Yes, I agree. There might be all sorts of problems.
Few Japanese had much time for leisure in the years of high growth, but golf, once the preserve of senior managers, has become a mass sport. Most, like Mr. Kusakabe, practice off the course.
I suppose I play about twice a month these days. As to how I can afford it, well, I talked it over with my wife and we sold the car. The money I've saved by not having to run a car, I can use as pocket money to spend on golf, drink, and so forth. How I find the time? Well, I managed to get a bit of free time from work. As for money, I may be a bit more fortunate than most people. I have my little nest egg, my little secret hoard, as it were. So this gives me a bit more freedom than others in that respect. I don't really have worries on that score.
The most common form of relaxation for Japanese men like Mr. Noguchi remains pachinko, Japanese pinball. Even more popular than baseball or golf, it's played regularly by 30% of the population. One of the issues at the union management meeting is retirement and preparing workers for the hours of leisure they'll have on their hands. The union is directly involved.
One important point is our strategy for the older workers. From the union's point of view, we think it's very important that as each individual grows older, they can have a healthy and rewarding life in the community right to the end.
Mr. Kusakabe was one of the 200 shop floor workers who were required to go on pre-retirement training last year. The standard retirement age is 60, and the preparation starts 15 years before that. The courses are held twice a year. One of the aims is to encourage self-awareness and self-criticism.
将来に備えてどんな自己啓発をしていますか。これも私3点上司1点でほとんどやってません。これ僕自分で1点つけても不思議じゃないと思ってるんですよね。はい。はい。それで3点をいただきました。まず組織図からでいいですか。はい。違いましたっけ。奥さんの手紙ちょっと勘弁してくださいよ。
To help families communicate more, the company contacts the wives and asks them to write a letter to their husbands about marriage and retirement. It can be the first time a man finds out what his wife thinks of him.
女房からの手紙を読みます。研修会ご苦労様です。大変でしょうね。頭の痛くなる思いをしているのではないでしょうか。久しぶりにあなたに書く手紙。さて何を書いたらよいか。随分考えました。毎日仕事で大変な思いをしているのに、これ以上望むつもりはないし、かわいそうだと思っています。あなたとの話し合いの中ではお互いの向いている方向が多少ずれているような気もしましたが、あんな風に真正面から話し合いをしたのは 初めてですもの。2人とも照れていましたからね。これからは少しずつそういう時間を増やしていけたらと思います。結婚して14年、子育ても一応一段落ですし、これからは2人だけの時間も少しずつ増やし、健康に注意し、お互いに支え合っていけたらと願っています。ひろみ。
花田さんの上司であります。
When retirement day comes, there's a formal send-off.
花田さん、どうも長い間ご苦労様でした。42年って言いますと、私が花垂れ小僧、まだ小僧っていうか、あんまり外を出してもらえなかったんじゃないかなっていうぐらいの感じの時でして、それ以来42年間という間、本当にご尽力いただいてありがたく思っております。ぜひこれから退職された節には健康に気をつけていただき、また張り合いを持ってですね、自分の人生を楽しんでいただきたいなというふうに思います。本当に長い間どうもありがとうございました。
Mr. Hanada used to make paper for color prints.
というわけで、それではね、花田さんの、42年間の、経緯、それでは言います。花田富夫さん、万歳！万歳！万歳！万歳！
Many retirees take new jobs in small companies or shops because of Japan's acute labor shortage. Mr. Oshima now grows vegetables in a field overlooking the factory. He's part of what the Japanese call the greying society. When everyone had large families and people died young, Japan was a youthful society. Suddenly, after the war, the birth rate dropped and health improved. The Japanese now live longer than anybody else.
そうですね。やはりね、日本のこれからはね、今テレビとか新聞。
From now on in Japan, the average age is going to get older and older. It's being talked about a lot in the newspapers and on radio and television. The question of how we deal with the elderly will become a growing problem.
でもね、これは個人ではね、なかなかね、吸収できない。
There are a lot of problems that individuals won't be able to handle, so the question arises whether the state should provide hospitals, homes and so on, or should it be the local authorities? When the elderly develop problems such as dizziness, senility and other geriatric complaints, the issue of how to deal with this becomes serious. It's not something that families can cope with. It needs to be dealt with through structures and organizations.
With high land prices and cramped accommodation, living arrangements like Mr. Kusakabe's are becoming the exception. In his home, there's still space for the traditional way of caring for the old, 3 generations under one roof. His mother-in-law now lives with them. She plays a central role in the family, helping her daughter, Toyoko, keep the house. There's still room for the Kusakabe's daughter, Yumi, who's now 20 and still studying.
The ideal attitude to have, in my view, is to look after and respect the elderly. There's a lot to be learnt from the older generation, and by doing this ourselves, my husband and I are letting our daughter understand how we would like to be treated when we're old. But of course my daughter will look after us. I can confidently say she will do this for us.
For the new Fujifilm recruits of 1990, the key question is where their first posting will be. Mr. Nagao, the recruitment manager, now has the crucial task of allocating the jobs now that training is almost over.
これはね、なんか自分の気持ちがあるのはね、具体的に固まってない。
日本の場合はですね、学生は、会社に入ったらですね、大体その
In Japan, it's taken for granted that when a graduate joins a company, he'll stay with it until the day he retires at 60.
ということがほとんど前提になっているわけです。ですから一つのその
It's not that he's joining in order to do any specific job.
というふうな感じで、会社に入ってくるわけで
From the company's point of view, we want our recruits to become businessmen in the widest sense, and we want them to develop and grow, and we help them achieve this by giving them a variety of different work experiences.
になっていくということを前提にしてますので、特定の仕事
We don't have people apply for any particular job.
ことはない。次は事務系なんだけれども、下坂。
Next on the administration side is Mr. Shimosaka.
早稲田の小学部。
He did business studies at Waseda University.
日本経済。
His specialization was the Japanese economy. He did pretty well in the tests.
He's got a very strong desire to go abroad. His first choice is the export department.
それはもう本当に一体感というものを作ってたと思うんですね。
The lifetime employment system gives the workers a sense of belonging. Nobody could feel this kind of loyalty to a company if he could be sacked at any moment.
逆に言えばその会社を変えていくことが不利だった状況ではそういった忠誠心を持つことが
Or to look at it another way, in Japanese society, it's a disadvantage to change jobs. So it's in all our best interests to be loyal to one company and to develop our careers within it.
一番いいものだった。
まあ使えるっていうのは英語は使える。
He could use his English there, couldn't he?
Yes, and he says himself that he would like to go abroad. So one thought would be to put him in exports and see how it goes.
What about giving him some domestic experience first?
Yes, it's a thought. There are all sorts of routes he could take.
だそういう社長になれるかっていうと、それはなるように努力していくかもしれない。
As to whether I can become company president or not, I'll try to do so.
自分のそのやりたいことだとか。
But since it's probably completely out of the question, I think what you have to do is to pursue what you want. Right now, if you were to ask me what I really, truly wanted to do, I'd have to say that I'd just like to be bumming around.
痛いみたいなものですから。
At 5 in the afternoon, it's the end of the factory day. Japanese workers still put in more time than in the West, an average of 2,100 hours a year, compared with 1,600 in Germany or 1,900 in Britain. Most small companies still work 6 days a week, and Japanese seldom take all the holidays they're due. The average official holiday is 15 paid days, but half the workforce take only 8 of these. The greatest workaholics are the office workers. The lights burn late every night in the Tokyo headquarters of Fujifilm. There's now a government campaign to get people to work less and take longer holidays. They're sensitive to foreign complaints that the Japanese don't play fair as trade competitors because they work too long hours. The Japanese are concerned at the increase in karoshi, death from overwork.
In Japan, it's as though the employees of training companies and other companies are soldiers. By the way, they swear total devotion to their jobs. They have no life outside the company at all. I don't think that's good. They do nothing for their families. Top management may be saying take more time off, go home and spend more time with your family. But the top managers themselves never go home. Even though they may be saying the words, many people don't actually want to go home. And we can get cases where people just can't bring themselves to do so.
It's the group that causes the stress. It's the group that alleviates it. By day, they must observe strict office protocol, but at night, they can relax and lower their guard.
英語でアグレッシブって非常に綺麗だけどさ、日本語でね、がめつになっちゃうね。がめつになってあんまり良くないよね。やっぱりがめつくやっちゃいけないですよ。
で、やっぱり遅くなるとタクシーででも帰ってくればいい。
When it gets late, it'd be great if he came home by taxi. But the phone would go. Mum, will you come and pick me up? He'd phone me without fail. So particularly at the beginning, I wouldn't change into my pajamas, I wouldn't get into the bath, I wouldn't even take my makeup off. I would just wait up for him till all hours.
本当もう映画だけが娯楽だった時代があるんですね。
まあ日本的な亭主としたらばよく働いて。
A good husband in Japan is thought to be one who works hard, brings home a good salary and is always healthy. One who will stand a good deal of wear and tear.
長持ちっていうところですよね。でも私の場合にも
But in my case, since I've had experience of living in Germany, I think a husband shouldn't just work. He should also have enough leeway to be able to give his wife a good time now and then.
会話っていうのはね、割とこの少ない。
If I examine my conscience, I have to admit we don't talk very much. Perhaps this is proof of my wife's accusation that I'm not very romantic. It's as if it gives her a lot of trouble.
The after-work drinking is for men. But at Cherry Blossom time, there's a company picnic for all. There are other office outings during the year when whole sections or departments will make a trip to a festival or a resort together. For Mr. Kusakabe, at home, there's another episode of his favorite samurai serial. They work or drink late in all Japan's big cities. By one calculation, the salaryman is at home and actually awake with his family for an average of only 5 hours in a working week. In a hostel near the factory, the recruits wait nervously for the news of where they'll be placed in the company. They've been able to state a preference, but in the morning they'll find out what the management has decided for them.
6時半起きでしょ。6時半に飯。飯で6時に起きなきゃダメなの。6時に起きて5時半頃には起きた方がいいんじゃない？ああ。嘘マジか。今日起きれんの？じゃあやっぱもうそろそろ寝た方がいいでしょ。うん。もんかな。うん。電気して。はい。僕カバンの中に入ってる。ああ。寝ましょうか。ああ。ほんじゃ。 じゃあおやすみなさい。おやすみ。
起こしてね、明日。
いや、もうこれ続くと寝そう。
Mr. Takumi Yajiro, Osaka subsidiary. First sales department, third sales section.
Next day, they gather to hear their first posting within the Fujifilm empire.
Mr. Kiyote Hata, Technical Development Center. Mr. Hiroaki Shimosaka, Number 2 Sales Department, Printing Systems Department, Business Section. Mr. Takao Kabayashi, Number 2 Sales Department.
Shimosaka is disappointed. It's not where he wanted to go.
Mr. Yoshihiro Matsumoto, Number 2 Sales Department, Printing Systems Department, Individual Sales Number 2 Section.
Some months later, Hiroaki Shimosaka is serving his time in a junior position in a busy sales office at Tokyo headquarters. There's now much talk in Japan of changing values, less lifetime employment, more individuality. But despite his hopes, Shimosaka finds he's working in just the same way as the previous generation.
I get to work at 9 o'clock and I go home at about 11 or 12. I work until that time and then I go home by taxi. I usually miss the last train, so I have to take a taxi home. And even though Saturday and Sunday are days off, I come in most Saturdays, and sometimes I work Saturday and Sunday. That's the life I lead nowadays.
According to our philosophy, a man's work is his life. The heavy emphasis on this comes from our tradition. Our attitude is that if someone's half-hearted, then nobody will take him seriously, not just in his company, but everywhere. That's the attitude. You live through your work. You master your work, and then you go ahead and do it.
In the years after the war, the Japanese people shared one national goal: to catch up with the West. Now they've achieved their goal, and the way the world sees Japan and the Japanese see their own role in the world is changing fast.